So Tori Bay put out an interesting video. She cut off her stitches and duets, so I'm not gonna take footage from the video. She asked a really interesting question. What is a Christian, and what? And I'll let you go to her page and check out her video on that. But I wanted to add in a couple of thoughts. I think that's something that's so personally defined and unique to each person. It's kind of like asking someone what the question of God is. And I think each person has to unpack that for themselves. It's why deconstruction is so important. Each person has to figure out what their concept of what a Christian is. And each person has to figure out what their concept of God is. Because what Christians and Christianity in general fails to realize is that who and what a Christian is changes depending on what you believe. It's the same thing with the concept of God, is that God in and of itself is a non-unique identifier. Most people will say, I'm referring to the God of Abraham and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. But they're not, I would argue that they're not purely referring to that entity, because they don't completely know what that entity is. And what they know is what they believe about that entity. And so what ends up happening, and what people really have to begin to unpack, is that they create the God they are okay with worshiping. It's why Christianity sometimes can feel very circular, because everyone is always making up and explaining what God is. And some people choose, admittedly so, to believe in nothing at all, because the God that Christianity, in part, and depending on which sect you're in, is largely made up. And it's made up of the thoughts, the feelings, and the ideas of that particular group. Now, is that wrong? I don't recommend it. As a person with extrasensory capacities, I fully recommend that people deconstruct and then ask and request that you get to know the true entity that exists. Because for most people, you have to have faith. For someone like me, I don't. What I keep saying on this channel is that I don't know what Christians are worshiping, and it's usually largely a composite of what they choose to believe, and bits and